Hi, this is Chris Epting with another audio edition of Surf City Chronicles. Back in 2014, there was a very controversial incident within the Ocean View School District involving asbestos material that was discovered in several schools. And without unpacking the entire issue, it will be included here on the blog, given who our guest is today. But it was remains a very heated topic for a lot of parents in the district that are beginning to feel as if many of the questions went unanswered to the district, and certain things remain unresolved. One gentleman in particular, Jim Segura, joins me today. Jim, first of all, thank you very much for taking a few minutes and for reaching out about your questions on this issue.
Sure, my pleasure, Chris.
Jim, just to get people up to speed, in 2014, in the midst of all this, well, first of all, why don't you describe your situation within the district, where your child went to school, and kind of where you sat as a parent back in 2014 when this all broke loose?
Okay, well, my daughter was beginning eighth grade at Mesa View Middle School,
Mm-hmm.
and we went there on the day before school, which was September 2nd. And that was so she could find her homeroom, and it was a new school for her. So we wanted to familiarize her with the campus so she wouldn't be completely lost the first day. And when we went on campus, we walked around the corner of a building, and we were just covered with dust from a gentleman with a leaf blower, blowing dust all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a landscaper. He was part of the construction company. He wasn't a district employee.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, we thought nothing of it. We just thought, wow, rude guy with no manners. And we tried to get around the cloud and went around behind the buildings to try to familiarize her with the rooms. And, you know, that was it. We thought nothing of it. Later on, we of course learned that on that day, the area was still not cleared for asbestos, meaning it hadn't had its final inspection.
Mm-hmm.
That was just, very, very shocking. You think, wow, you get dust blown on you
Mm-hmm.
from an asbestos cleanup site. And
Were
no
there
warning.
signs up? Were there any kind of signs up or any sort of
There were
perimeter or anything like that?
there were no signs. There was no caution tape, no barriers, no nothing. It was, it was just one of those moments where your heart sinks,
Mm-hmm.
and you're thinking about your child, your most precious gift in your life, and all of a sudden, okay, what was she exposed to just then? And how much,
Mm-hmm. So the issue then unfolds, and you think back to that day, obviously, and what exposure, may have occurred with you. And then what do you do? I mean, I know there was, obviously, again, we're not going to rehash the whole thing, but there were a lot of public meetings, there was a lot of media, there was a lot of overthrow within the district. But as a parent, your concerns were obviously heightened enough where you composed a set of questions for the board, right? And then you posted those in a Facebook group back in 2014. Those would have been addressed, I believe, to John Briscoe and Gina Clayton Tarvin.
That's true, because they were active on that forum.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't force them to go on that forum. They are very active, posting things all the time. So I thought, well, geez, I'll take the opportunity to ask them questions. Why not? And I thought it was great because this is in the public. Their answers have to be in the public, and it'll be recorded. And I had a set of questions that had been weighing heavily on me, and so I asked them.
And basically, people can read here on the blog. You can see the questions involve accountability. I think they're fairly basic and pretty hard hitting, actually, in terms of responsibility, accountability, and all those things. And you reposted those questions this week within the Ocean View School District Facebook forum. But you did get answers back then, to be clear, right? Well, describe a little bit, because you were contacted by one of the board members offline back then, weren't you?
One of the board members instant messaged me, giving me her phone number, asking me to call her, and I just didn't feel right about it, so I never contacted her.
Who would that have
Uh,
been?
that was Gina Clayton Parvin.
Uh-huh. And you just, what was the reason for not getting back to her? Was it that you wanted more of a public forum? Did you not?
I wanted it to all be public. There is no reason to have a private phone call on any of this. Everything should be public and for everyone to see.
So what happened when you posted your questions initially back in 2014?
Um, Eventually, there was a response, which I believe she said was prepared by the district lawyer. Most of it was very heavily worded nothingness, really. Um, some of it kind of answered the questions. Some of the questions were ignored more or less, And so I wasn't happy with the responses at all.
And then here we are, I mean, a year and a half later, and you obviously not being satisfied with the answers then. What made you, or is that what made you decide to repost them this week? I mean, what was it about the time that had gone by that, that it made your decision or affected your decision to repost the same questions?
Well, one, I had to kind of remove myself from this situation. It can be overwhelming at times, You're thinking about the future health of your child. My own health is secondary, but you're thinking about what's going to go on with her in a decade or two, And, back when the last election was, the feeling was, well, just get these two people elected, and then everybody will be on the same page, and everything's going to be great, and you'll get all your answers. And well, the two new people are on the board.
You're talking about Joe and Jack, Joe Gagliani and Jack Satter.
Yes, yes, exactly. So there, you got your new board members in place, a majority for everybody. You have a new superintendent. I'm still waiting for the answers. I mean,
all right.
Where are they?
Okay. So that's why you reposted them. Even after, now again, you received answers in 2014. Those answers you didn't feel were satisfying, so you repost. And then what happens when you repost them this week, when you put those same questions up?
I got a little bit of blowback from a couple people. I got some good support, both online and in instant messages. But I did not attack the supervisors. I did not question their character or anything else. And yet I get people on here, one, saying that my Facebook account is fictitious and made up, and then go on to say that this whole thing is a sham. And then once I do confront them with the fact that I'm a real person, then they go on to question my integrity or what took me so long, or which has no bearing on anything.
Yeah, I don't think there's a statute of limitations on this. And to your point about having your character challenged or assailed in some cases, and the accusations you're not even real. I mean, sadly, that seems to have become a pattern with a lot of the handful of surrogates that either are working directly for or with the school board, or just kind of on their own, or some combination thereof. Definitely seem to take that tack, because when there's an opposing point of view, one of the first lines of defense is, well, they're not a real person, and then once somebody proves they're a real person, it gets into the character stuff, and really kind of challenging, a lot of misdirection, a lot of deflection, and not a lot of hard answers to specific questions. And I know a lot of us have gone through that ourselves as we sort of begin challenging and looking at the accountability and lack of transparency with these elected officials.
Yeah, and this is what gets me is I do not know the supervisors personally. I know nothing about them. I have not judged them on any of their character traits or if they're a good person or a bad person. I don't care. And I don't care who is in office right now. I just want answers. That's that's the bottom line. Why can we not have answers? This is a school district. It's not some secret government agency, and that's what they're acting like.
Jim, what do you think you can do beyond the public post? Now, presumably, everybody you've addressed has seen the questions because we all know how these. I think a lot of us now have gotten used to how this works. There's plenty of quiet eyeballs on those things, and the people that are addressed often will not interact. I mean, they'll interact when it suits their cause or agenda, when there's a certain topic at hand, but when it's not convenient necessarily, like your questions may be at this point, you won't hear back. What can you do? Have you reached out personally? Do you think about making a phone call, going to a school board meeting? How will you take it to the next level to demand an answer or even corner an answer out of a school board that I think most people would agree by every right owes you and other parents as well? Because for what it's worth, I've heard from other parents in the last few weeks, this issue has sort of never gone away in the district. And I think, as you've articulated, with a new board in there, it doesn't mean the issue went away. Just because some of the personalities swapped out, the district is still responsible for answering these questions. You're not alone in terms of parents that are all of a sudden thinking, "Hey, what were we exposed to? What was the process like going forward, and what happened?" And it's other people are asking questions too. But what do you think you'll do now if those questions don't go answered in that Facebook forum?
I don't know. I mean, I was criticized for not going to meetings and this type of thing. People need to understand that not everybody has the physical. Once again, I don't feel I should have to have a private meeting or conversation. Mm-hmm. Everything these people do and say regarding school district business should be done completely in the open. Mm-hmm. I mean, why? Why should there be privacy or closed-door meetings, and especially about something as important as this? I mean,
well, I agree. But I would say, too, that if people choose, again, the use of Facebook as a communicative tool for the district is used very selectively when it serves their purposes. And if they're going to not do that, then I would say as a concerned parent, if I were you, I mean, personally, I would go to that next level and request the meeting and at least get the answers you demand, because it would seem at this point like maybe the topic is being shredded by some surrogates but not being taken seriously by those that have the power to do something about it, the board members. So at some point it might behoove you to, if you don't get answers on there, maybe you will, but if you don't, it might make sense to push for something a little bit more direct and face-to-face, at least so you can get the answers and hopefully communicate those answers to other concerned parents.
Well, this is what concerns me. How can that be more of an important issue than your child's health?
Mm-hmm. I agree. No, I think it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that you've got that it isn't enough, when you see all these discussions happening in real time on Facebook, when they're very present for certain issues. It's frustrating when they go, radio silent on things that are perhaps, again, don't quite fit the narrative that they're trying to invoke. But, that's where I think it becomes incumbent upon citizens to go that extra mile and to demand answers. I mean, again, these are taxpayer-funded elected officials, and we have every right to ask these questions. And, I mean, you ended up taking your daughter out of the school. Is that right?
That's correct. We sat in limbo for about a month because we were, we still had faith in the district, and at that point, we wanted answers, and none were forthcoming. So after about a month, we were really sweating it, and we just made the decision to homeschool her for that year, which is what I did. But also on that point is about the month that she was in school, during the weekdays, she would constantly have a runny nose, sometimes a bloody nose. Mm-hmm. And mysteriously, it would clear up on the weekends. She would go back to school, runny nose again. So probably aside from asbestos, there was some other issue going on there. There's all kinds of construction going on, and just at a bad set of circumstances to put a child in.
Well, Jim, I appreciate you talking about this. It's never that easy to go public with things like this, especially in the face sometimes of a bureaucracy or a group that is very private and at times secretive and sometimes doesn't quite come off as working for the public. Like I said, it can be very selective in terms of where their concerns lie. So I appreciate that. And I would encourage any other parents that are listening to this that have similar concerns to reach out and tell your story too. These stories matter. These stories should be heard. They should be addressed. And certainly, your questions, Jim, I think are very straightforward and very honest. And certainly there's nothing in them that doesn't warrant, I don't feel, complete answers. And I did go back and look at the answers you received, and I agree. Some of it seems very tailored and I don't want to say evasive, but lawyerly enough where you're not quite getting direct answers to again some very hard questions. So I would encourage you to keep the heat turned up, take it to the levels that you need to, and any other parents as well on behalf of your kids. These are people that are elected to that are in charge of your kids. That's a very important thing. And when you look at their sort of code of behavior they sign on to, in many instances, we're not seeing examples of that being exhibited by some of these board members. So by all means, get what you pay for. Go in there and get your questions answered, and don't be scared and don't be intimidated. They'll come at you. I mean, as you're learning, Jim, you're a very real person, obviously. You're not the alias that some people may accuse you of. So hopefully we've at least put that to rest here with this interview, that you are very real. You do live in the community, and you're very frustrated with the Ocean View School District.
And then, Chris, I'd just like to add one last thing. They've had over a year and a half. Why hasn't a complete, thorough investigation been done within the system and those results compiled into a comprehensive report, which should be in every mailbox in the school district? I mean, it's been enough time, don't you think?
I think that's a very powerful thought to leave on, Jim. I agree with you completely, and I'm sure many other residents will. I mean, if it's been done, great. Let's let it be shared. If it's not been done, then your question, obviously, why not, is an even more powerful one. So, thank you for posing that, and let's stay in touch. And again, any other parents can get a hold of me through surfcitychronicles.com, and I look forward to your questions and comments, whatever you have. Jim, thank you again so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chris.